In the mid-afternoon of a fire in the Ford area. The fire had already grown from just a small fire in the backyard of a residence to several acres. And by the time the sun rose the next morning, it was up around 8,000 acres.
It just kept kind of moving on us, and everything we did, it kind of just laughed at us.
In the Ford area.
If you don't have enough resources to be offensive, then you have to go into defensive mode, which is protecting, values at risk, structures, people's homes.
And by the time the sun rose the next morning, it was up around 8,000 acres.
I had bought this property years ago.
Moving on us, and
2011,
everything we did, it kind of just laughed at us.
There's absolutely
don't have enough
nothing compared to getting out on your front early morning and hearing all the birds and wildlife and seeing bear walk through your yard. And the deer come right up and look in the window while you're sleeping. But this property is just one of those things where I finally found peace. So that's why I plan on staying. Old habits die hard, and I listened to a scanner all the time, and I heard the fire start down there in Ford. Then I started hearing that it was heading this way, and then I heard them do the evacuation.
It's 231 and all of Rails Union.
And I said, I have prepared a fire defense system, and I'm just going to stick it out. I would not encourage anyone to do what I did. I kind of watched it come up over the hill and started taking some pictures, some videos. And I had gone out before the fire actually hit here and took a hose and watered down the roof, made sure the gutters were soaked because there were a lot of pine needles in there I knew they'd catch. It wasn't a forest fire, it was a firestorm. I could see the flaming embers coming up out of the trees, and it was coming up towards the property, and the wind started. All that flaming ash came out, and it was raining fire. So at one point I was out there trying to hose things down and put these little fires out. And all of a sudden the power went out. So once the power goes out, no more well, no more water. So at that point I had to call 911, and they were apparently just down the road, and they were up here right away to help out. And if it wasn't for them, I would have probably lost the house. I think at one point, after they came up here to help and were putting out the small fires around the house, one of them apparently recognized that I was almost on the verge of getting a little shocky and dehydrated. So he handed me a bottle of water, and I downed about half of that in one gulp. Like the fire chief said, I was very lucky. Now, all my life, I've never backed down from anything. And it was hard to watch that coming. From a personal standpoint, I won. The fire district won. I consider them one of the more well-trained that I've been around. And it's mainly because I think it's people that they hire are made up of people that live here. They know the area, they know most of the people, and they do care. I mean, those folks, I can't give them enough credit. The house is still standing, garage is still standing, and I'm still sitting here talking to you.
Of a fire in the Ford area. We got to the scene. The fire had already grown from just a small fire in the backyard of a residence to several acres. And by the time the sun rose the next morning, it was up around 8,000 acres.
That day, with the fuels and the humidity being low and a little bit of weather and topography of where the fire had started, it just kept kind of moving on us, and everything we did, it kind of just laughed at us. If you don't have enough resources to be offensive, then you have to go into defensive mode, which is protecting, values at risk, structures, people's homes.
It wasn't a forest fire, it was a firestorm. I could see the flaming embers coming up out of the trees, and it was coming up towards the property, and the wind started. All that flaming ash came out, and it was raining fire. I mean, just absolutely raining fire. If it wasn't for them, I would have probably lost the house.
Is 231 and all of Rail Canyon.
As the scene unfolded, certainly additional volunteers would have been extraordinarily helpful in getting the word out. Having 20 or 30 volunteers respond to a scene instead of the 10 that we were able to initially muster that day, while it wouldn't have stopped that fire, it certainly could have helped control the boundaries of that fire. It certainly could have aided in getting notice out to the people who lived in the area that the fire was advancing toward. We will take any of our members of our community any day who are willing to step up and pick up the mantle of that challenge.
I'd had people in the past kind of goad me about joining the fire department, so one day kind of had an epiphany sitting on the couch that, oh, maybe I should give that a try. The rest is history. Started doing it, fell in love with it. Never really intended to get a job doing it, just wanted to volunteer. Been here for 12 years. So. We say this, the first time you get in one of these red trucks and fly down the highway with the lights and sirens going, it hooks you.
Stevens Fire Rescue 1 is really a very unique department because we view our mission as being something much greater than just simply fire response. For a great deal of our population, we are the primary or only provider of medical services. They rely on us, and in many cases, it's a life-changing reliance that they have on us.
Being a part of what we do is the most rewarding thing you can do in your life for numerous reasons. Not very many people in their life can say that they've saved somebody's life. That really makes your heart swell.
The fire service is much like the military and much like law enforcement in that the level of camaraderie, the level of fellowship between the men and women that work in those fields is a bond that you don't find in just about any other job. We train together, we socialize together, we do everything together. We work with our people regardless of what your intent is, what you as a volunteer want to get out of your service. Our volunteers are every bit as functional as our career people. We can put people through the training. We provide them all that training with.
So I'd like to welcome everybody tonight to our actually very first live YouTube stream. So we're hoping it works out for those online, for those of you that are here. Appreciate your attendance and welcome to Fire District 1. If you don't know me, I'm Mike Busey. I'm the fire chief here. We've got Commissioner Mark Whitaker, another commissioner, Skip Wells, DeAndre Schmitz in the back there, Ashley's over there, Siegfried, and then Daryl Wallace is going to be on my camera here. So we're going to be doing some things over there. David Fort, which I'll introduce in a second, is going to be a big part of this going forward. And so what I want to cover is just a couple things. Tonight's meeting is so you guys can understand what's going on with the wildland and insurance rates, cancellations, increases, that type of stuff. I know we have Ellen and Eva here, both insurance agents. Is there any other insurance agents in here? Okay, so I'm sure they'll have some specific questions. If you're online, type in your question. Ashley will take those down and we will get to those. If you're in person, that's fine. If you're at Station 8 Suncrest, same thing. Get your question in to Roy or Jason down there and they'll type them in and Ashley will get those questions and we can ask as we go along. This is not meant to be a political event. There are some politics involved, but it's more so you understand what's going on kind of behind the scenes and how they operate, how we operate as a fire district. So I just want that to kind of be out there. I have to use notes because it's been one of those days. As far as the fire district concerns, and David will get into this a little bit, but all of you know you have your insurance. There's an insurance rating bureau, the Washington State Ratings Bureau, that rates fire districts based on their protection. And then they sell that information to the insurance companies, is basically how it works, the simple version. Fire district's role in that is to provide the information to WSRB and do the best we can for you, our citizens. Back in 2017, 2018, myself, along with a bunch of others around the state, were part of the WSRB Fire Committee, if you will, to try to make some changes to benefit us and benefit you guys. And we started pushing for a wildland component. And they finally said, okay, we'll do a wildland component. It went into the new schedule, which came into play in 19 or 20, I don't remember. We got rated, I think, in 21. And then we got 100% on our wildland component, which means, hey, pretty good, right? Come to find out that didn't mean much to us. Conversely, we also got what we call a tender credit, which means if you're out in our rural area, instead of an 8, you got to bump up to a 7, which is a good thing. So we got a tender credit because we have the right equipment, the right supplies, the right amount of water. We can flow a certain amount of water in a certain amount of time. So what we're trying to do is get a wildland credit so that at least the insurance companies will acknowledge it's a part of the ratings bureau at this particular point. And I don't want to get too deep into that. This meeting's for the public, for those out in YouTube land, and for you guys in here. Just so you are aware, the fire district is also hosting David tomorrow night, but it's targeted to fire districts because we have more specific questions, and I didn't want to blur the two, get too technical tonight, and make sure you guys had your time to ask questions and get a better understanding of what was going on. So without further ado, this is David Fort, Senior Policy Advisor, right?
That's right, thanks, Chief.
For Office of the Insurance Commissioner. So please welcome him. He's been a busy guy the past couple of days.
And thank you, Chief, for the invitation. This is a great fire district. They're doing a lot of good work for everybody, and the stuff that they're trying to do with WSRB is important, and we appreciate everything that this district is doing. So, as Chief said, I serve as a Senior Policy Advisor at the Office of the Insurance Commissioner. Part of what my job is to provide technical assistance to legislators as they draft laws to amend the insurance code. When we're not in session, what my job is I lead internal teams to do regulatory rulemaking, and I lead the Commissioner's policy efforts for things like wildfire mitigation. And then probably the most critical job that I have is to be some eyes and ears for the agency, to know what's happening in your experiences and be able to bring them back to the agency so we could try to propose something to help. So I hope today is more of a discussion, and after I give you just some background of how the insurance is working in Washington, whether it's some of the things that are out of our control, whether the things that are in our control, hopefully you'll be able to tell me your guys' experiences. So let's just take a look. For background, just so we have a baseline of how the discussion is going to go tonight, I just want to briefly touch on how insurance works. Insurance is a way to manage risk. So we use insurance to create financial resilience. But when you buy insurance, you purchase it to protect you against an unforeseen loss that could come into the future. There are really 5 basic ways that risk is transferred, or we manage risk. There's avoiding, there's preventing, there's retaining, holding on to the risk, spreading it, and then transfer it. So when we use insurance, we transfer our risk away. When an insurance company takes our risk, they try to spread it out amongst many people. So the larger the group, the better, because when you spread the costs out to many individuals, now the burden for that loss is not on the one person, but it's upon the many, and that's how we can afford to recover. So the very basics of that, when you have a low risk pool, the costs are low. When you have a high risk pool, the costs go up. And here's the foundation of insurance. If it's not for the law of large numbers, insurance would not exist. So insurance companies use the law of large numbers to estimate future outcomes. The larger the sample size, the more the actual loss per event will equal the estimated or the expected loss. And in order for the law of large numbers to work, the pooled exposures, they kind of need to be approximately the same probability of loss. So how that works is insurance companies will use historic claim data to predict future loss. And what you're going to see in the next couple slides is things are changing, where that kind of concept is breaking down. So how you read this graph is the bottom is the months, the lines are the years, and the dots going up the left side are the number of events that have created more than $1 billion in loss. And what's happening is 4 out of the last 6 years, we have exploded far, far above the average. And the average used to be about 8 events per year in the United States would be over $1 billion. Last year, there was 28. And so really the most important concept to understand about insurance pressures is claims cost, the cost for the insurance companies to pay out what they owe under their policies to their insureds. And here's another visualization of where these events are occurring. So if you look at the darker areas around the Gulf, I mean, we know with the hurricanes and water damage and wind damage there, they're having most of the national damage. And California is rising over the last decade with their wildfire risk. And this is also kind of a good map to see how the cost of insurance is across the state. Because again, cost of insurance is kind of reflective to how much damage each state is creating. So Washington is not the highest, we're not the lowest, we're kind of in the middle for national insurance premiums. Another thing that's out of our control is there are entities called reinsurance companies. These are global behemoths. They're the insurance companies for insurance companies that we work with, like State Farms and Allstates and Country Financial and
Horace Mann.
So we call those companies primary insurers, and reinsurers are above them. And they function very similarly that we interact with our insurance companies. Insurance companies interact with them. And companies like Berkshire Hathaway, AIG, Aon, Swiss Re, Munich Re. And what the blue line is representing here is exposure. And what exposure means in insurance is how much someone's on the hook for. And these reinsurance companies are on the hook more and more and more as insurance companies cede part of their risk exposure up to the reinsurer. Let's say a company has $1 billion of exposure, how much they're on the hook for. And what they'll do, Mr. Reinsurance Company, we like to transfer 500,000 or 500 million of our risk to you. Reinsurance company says sure for a price, and so they negotiate. And now, if the primary insurer's claim payouts hit 500 million, now the reinsurance is triggered, and now the reinsurance company will start paying out. How that works is that allows our primary insurance companies more capacity. So they're able to cover more people, more risky people. They're able to broaden their books of business. But what's happening is the magenta line is that's how much money the reinsurance companies have. That's their capital. So their capital is dropping while their exposure is going up. And what that means is they're not accepting the primary insurance company's risks as much as they used to. And if they are, it's very expensive. So that trickles down. And so what happens to the primary insurance company, they used to have all of this capacity, and now they can't transfer their risk to somebody else. They have to carry it more and more. So they're restricting. And how that looks to us is they non-renew and they cancel people. And they do it for different reasons. They may do it because they view the risk to be too risky, or they may not just want to be so concentrated in certain areas. So if a certain insurer had 50 homes in one canyon, they may go, that's too risky, we may only want to carry 25 in this canyon. So that could be a reason why folks are getting non-renews. And we'll talk about that a little bit. So these are things we can't control. We call this a hard market. This is when the insurance capacity, how much coverage is available for people, is shrinking. And the demand is still high. We all need insurance, but the insurance market can't take it because they don't have the capital or the capacity to cover it. So what's happening in Washington? Remember, I kind of said claims, and claims cost is really the driver of insurance rates, and I'm going to talk about why that is. But here's what's happening in Washington State alone. So in 2018, we had $941 million of, this is just homeowners policies. This isn't manufactured homes or renters or commercial. This is just homeowners. And as you can see over time, it's going up and up and up. All signs right now is 2023 is going to be over $2 billion. So in just 5 or 6 years, it's doubled. And that is the cost of construction, really, because it's mostly the cost of repairing structure. And that's the number one cost component for a homeowner's claim. So how does this affect us? Well, and you know what? My office, we don't do a great job of explaining it to the consumers of how rates are created. They're not created like a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread. They're very structured on how rates are calculated. In Washington State, insurance companies have to submit a filing of what they want their rates to be. In Washington State, we have what's called prior approval. The commissioner has to approve the rates before they can be used. Not every state's like that. Most states are not like that. Most states, insurance companies can use a rate before it's approved. Some states never approve it. Some states, Wyoming for instance, doesn't even file rates. So what that causes in Washington State, we believe, is it forces the insurance company to put together a little bit more thoughtful rate filings, more accurate rate filings. So what the insurance company has to do, they have to say how much money we need to pay our claims in the future. That's the money that they're trying to pool. And so they have to support it. They have to have data of why they think they need this amount of money. They're also allowed to have operational cost, taxes, license, and profit. In Washington State, they can't do more than 5% profit. That's a combination of what we call underwriting, which is the pool of money, and then their investments as well. Two ways that insurance companies make money. It's your premium dollars that they collect, and then the investment. That's the only ways they can make money. So what our actuaries do, they receive the filing, they challenge it. They go through it and they make sure that the assumptions that the insurance companies are using are supported by data. That's called actuarially justifying. And then after some back and forth, if the data is supporting the rate, the commissioner has to accept it. If there's no law being broken, the commissioner has to accept the rate. And so here's what's happening in Washington State right now. It's homeowners are going up. You're seeing this on the auto side too. I know we're not here to talk about auto, but auto rates are going up, and it's due to the severity of claims, the cost of claims. We're not having more claims. It's the claims that we've had are just costing more. And so that's really the foundation of why rates are going up. Now, if anybody's willing to share, has anybody gotten a non-renewal or a cancellation? Okay. Okay. And so there was a couple folks that raised their hands. So what the insurance company has to do is they have to give you right now 45 days notice, and they have to tell you the actual reason why they're non-renewing you or canceling you. They're not just allowed to say increased risk. They have to be more specific. And if they're not being more specific with you, we'd like to know. So if you could, please take my card, contact me, get in touch with our complaint department. They have laws that they need to follow. This year, Senate Bill 5798 was proposed by Senator Patty Kuderer, and what she moved to do was to extend some time. It's a hard market. People may need more time to find coverage again. So this was fought by the insurance industry, and so she got it to pass, but it's not going to go into effect till next July, unfortunately. So at some point, we're going to be able to get more notice about this. What our data shows us is that people are getting non-renewed and people are getting canceled. And then when they go out to find coverage, they're able to find a new company, but it's much, much more expensive. Is this a similar experience? Okay. Then what I want to talk to you guys about is that we have an insurer of last resort in Washington State. So this company does not consider wildfire risk as a underwriting standard. You have to pass basic underwriting, meaning your home has to be maintained, it can't be in disrepair, and they send somebody out to inspect your house. You know, that doesn't happen right anymore for the normal insurance companies. They don't really go out and inspect. These folks will. They'll give you a report of saying, here is where your risk is. They have to, they've been reporting to us, the OIC, why people are going to the FAIR plan. And over 60% is because of multiple claims. That's what folks report to the FAIR plan of why they have to go to the FAIR plan. The insurance company said, you've had too many claims and we don't want to cover you anymore. When they try to go out to find other coverage, those companies say, I'm sorry, you have too many claims, we don't want to take this risk. About 14% right now is wildfire related, and that's growing. And here's what's happening around the country for insurers of last resort. Right now, Florida has 1.3 million, California has 350,000, Louisiana 120,000. Right now, we have 150 active policies for dwelling. And if anybody needs help contacting them, I can help and make sure that you have some insurance coverage. It is admittedly not a great policy. It'll satisfy loans, bank loans, and but it doesn't have all the bells and whistles of a normal policy. What these 150 folks are using for it right now in Washington, it appears it's usually transitory, meaning they come on for a year and then they're able to find coverage because they're also told by the FAIR plan where the property is kind of shaping up in underwriting, things they can do to improve it. So what are some of the things that we can do to help? And I'm going to be a broken record. It's all about claims, and it's all about claims costs. And the things that we can do to prevent being a claim, and if we have a loss, to lessen the severity of that, that is the pathway to have insurance available and in the future maybe affordable. I don't see the current market changing right now. I'm not here to say we're over the hump. I don't think we're over the hump. I think we're going to be continuing this cycle for a couple more years at least. And the things that we can start to do to maybe make insurance more available is, I think folks know about Firewise and NFPA, that's a community programs. Those are good programs. Insurance companies have a hard time rating to them because it's a community program and not an individual site parcel or an individual property. This is kind of coming online. So the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, they're based out of South Carolina. They've been doing hurricane wind mitigation science for 25 years, 30 years. And they work with the Southeast's departments of insurance to produce grant programs and to strengthen homes. And one state, Alabama, they've done 50,000 homes over the last 10 years. And because they were able to mitigate the home to withstand hurricane forces, their entire state's property insurance market is so much more affordable compared to Georgia and Florida and Mississippi and the Carolinas. And it's really attributed to, well, the Department of Insurance did grant programs for 50,000, but that just became the community standard for building after that, or for retrofitting, and many, many more than just 50,000 homes took that standard. So that entire market now is fortified against hurricane damage. That means less claims. And year in and year out, as they have lower and lower claims costs, their rates have been reducing compared to their neighboring states. But it's involved, right? Hurricane, you put on a new roof, strap it down, good for 10 years. Wildfire is not like that. And so it's going to be much more of a novel, new idea to try to figure out how to do this, especially in Washington. The trickiest thing is finding the funds, because it's not just a roof. Most of us have fire good roofs. It's the eaves, it's the vents, it's the defensible space, it's all of the extra stuff. And I don't have an answer of how we can afford that. I know that there's a House bill in Congress that's been introduced to provide funding for this type of stuff. The state legislature had a House bill last year, 2330, that, as introduced, had a mitigation program where we use state funds. There would be a grant application put out to do this type of work. That didn't make it through the legislature. We know that there are some forest health, community resilience programs available through DNR that could help with defensible space work, but there's nothing right now that does the actual retrofitting, and I think that's where we need to go, but I don't know how to get there. So, whoops. I want to make sure these are the folks that can really affect change, and I want you guys to know who your legislators, state legislators are. And I believe your two representatives might not be running again in November. I'm not quite, is that right? But I will say that Senator Shelley Short is a tremendous asset that you have in Olympia. She is effective, she's respected, and she just gets stuff done. And so when I look at this, I see another district 20 minutes away, I see another district 20 minutes away, another one 45 minutes away. You have a whole cadre of people there that could really make a difference. I don't have the answers to give them, but I can give them technical assistance on their ideas, and their ideas come from you. And so I encourage you to interact with your state legislators. Tell them, as much as telling me, what your situation is. And these are the folks that can really get stuff done. So that's all I have. You're welcome to take my contact information, reach out to me. And really, I just kind of want to hear what's happening out in the community, or if you have any questions for me.
Now's the time, don't be shy.
Who determines, like, in the last couple of years, my house is now a high wildfire risk. I got a north-facing slope, a metal roof, and a good green belt, and so my house won't burn from a wildfire, but my rates keep going up because somebody determined that it's a risk.
Yeah. So there's two things at play there. You have, you've heard me say the word underwriting. Underwriting is the function in the insurance world that determines whether a risk is worth accepting or declining. So, and then there is the rates. And so who determines that? Your insurance company does. And how they determine that is different. Every insurance company is different. Every insurance company has a different appetite for risk. We have about 150 different companies that do property insurance in the state of Washington. They all have different guidelines, and they all have different rate filings. And I can talk a little bit about one of the components is WSRB. They have property classification codes. That plays a role in underwriting, and that plays a role in rate making. In Washington State, the commissioner doesn't receive underwriting guidelines, so we don't know exactly what they're using, but we have an idea. There are things called wildfire risk scores, and these are companies, data analytic companies that insurance companies hire, so they're vendors of the insurance company, and they put together models, and it'll go down to the site parcel with a number. And so some of them are between 0 and 100, some of them are 0 and 30, they're all different. And then the insurance company takes the number and makes their own determination whether they're going to accept the risk. Let's say it's between 1 and 100 and it's at 75. Some insurance company will say, no, I'm not going to accept any business at a 75. The next company will say, I'll accept my current insurers, my current clients at 75, but I'm not going to take any new business at 75. And then the other company will say, I just won't take, or I'll take anybody at 75. So internally, they have to make their own determination with that. Our concern with the wildfire risk scores, and we did a video, it's kind of hard to find on our website, but we reached out to one of these companies to learn, like, well, what are you doing? And they told us that they're looking at fuel loads, and they're looking at exposures, and they're looking as what they can for structural components. They said to us, these risk scores, they don't measure whether a wildfire could happen. That's not what they're measuring. What they're measuring is, if a wildfire occurs, how likely is that house to be ignited? And so it kind of goes back to the mitigation stuff, if we could figure out a way to stop the ignition. But we also have concerns how much they're updating it. I asked them, when was the last time you updated Washington? They said 1.5 years. And so when you guys are doing mitigating efforts, how do we get them to recognize it? I asked them, can the consumer give it to you? Like, how do we input these into the model? They didn't really have an answer for me of how they can do that. So that is a great question. I don't know, would it be helpful if this state created a accurate risk model that could be updated every month by consumers with the work that they're doing? I don't know. I don't know if the state would be willing to do that, to fund that. Oregon Department of Natural Resources, they call it something else down there. They tried to do one a couple years ago. It caused a lot of headaches for property owners that were pretty upset that the state declared their property a certain risk level. So I think there's some weariness from watching what happened in Oregon. I don't know if our state would do that, but in my mind, it seems like an accurate way to create something accurate that can be updated. So I don't know if that answers your question of who it is, but it's the insurance companies that are determining it.
Nothing online? Anybody else? Eva or Ellen, do you want to say anything?
You know, we're still pretty open-minded, you guys, we're rural. Country will insure a lot of places that nobody else will. I know rates are high, it's not our fault. It's his, no, just kidding. But, it's really not. And it is. Hopefully things will change in a few years, but we don't know. But if you live rural, that's where our niche is. And I can insure the places that nobody else will. I pick up referrals from a lot of companies just because of that. And I'm not trying to sell myself, I don't care either way. I get policies every day. But I can help people that can't insure somewhere else. I can insure the 70s and 80s mobile homes even. If you have land, I can help you. And I'll go visit you. I'll just call you.
Card.
Yeah, of course. I like rural. I don't like city stuff. My cell number is the one on the middle.
Our company will actually look at individual properties and allow for underwriting pre-approval if it's an high wildfire score area, like Chattaroy, Deer Park, Mead.
And do they leave that inspection upon your agency, or do they?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I go out there, take photos,
Yep.
explain the situation, and they can override.
But you need
But
someone
it's
at the
for-
company to look at the file, to really put eyes on the
Our
underwriting
company will
file?
look at the file. Our underwriting would approve or disapprove.
Yeah.
So even though they'll look at that high wildfire score, if you're by the lake, more than likely they'll pre-approve it. If you are in an area with high tree areas, then I have other outlets, like in country, like you said.
Yeah.
Foremost has dropped a lot of zip codes.
And American Modern, they don't do
American
it either.
Modern, yeah.
So, unfortunately, your community is probably one of the more affected ones in all of Washington. Northwest of Leavenworth, that's a real bad area right now. Cle Elum, off 90. Unfortunately, you folks, them, and those communities are feeling the initial effects of this, and we kind of think it's going to spread, but unfortunately, you guys are seeing the first of it.
At a community level, can we be doing something? Like if 10 neighbors get together and...
Supporting the fire department, as Chief Boosie was saying, your fire department is helping with, as they do better with their stuff. And so continuing support. This fire station being built here is something that will help their WSRB score down the road. So just keep helping them. It's going to be on mitigation, being able to show that the community has a reduction in claim frequency and severity eventually will lead insurance companies want to make money. That's their whole job. If they can find it to be profitable to be in an area, they will be here. And we need to change the perception of the risk that may be out there. You guys maybe have seen, if you look at real estate sites, there's this little score down there that's these one companies have been hooking up with like Redfin and some of these ones, and they put a risk score next to the property. Well, insurance companies don't use those risk scores. That's a different entity. But they're creating a perception of what your risk is. Is that reality? And so we have to figure out a way to, one, mitigate our properties, and then be able to show that we have done the mitigating work to make our communities less susceptible to fire loss. And that's how we're going to get the markets to come back. Yes, sir.
Could the raising of property taxes have an effect on the raising of the insurance costs and prices?
The rate filings don't consider property tax in it, no. I mean, maybe if the property taxes were raised and used for community efforts, maybe that's a way to do it, but insurance companies don't look at property taxes that way.
Sure.
I have a question. So we live really rural. We're up in Blue Creek. We're on a dead-end road. If there's a fire sweep through, we're SOL. But with the fire, like, say if we could get everybody together and do a meeting in our community, will the fire department come out and kind of give us information?
This fire department will.
Okay, because we have the volunteer firefighters in, I don't know, Mel Brashler, but we need to do something. Our neighborhood, we have a lot of elderly people, and our road really is. I mean, we're way out there.
So we advertise a lot. That we'll do little neighborhood meetings, we'll do communities, we'll do whatever
Okay.
that you guys want to do. And I can, you know, one thing I can add to a couple comments and bring some stuff together that David said too is we are trying to do wildland mitigation. We only have so many people, you know, and staffing is always a concern, and our primary concern is making sure we go on the calls. So that leaves us short sometimes, even leaves me short sometimes. I was scheduled to do a Del Poa meeting last week and ended up on a structure fire down in Suncrest. We do have a grant out worth about $1.7 million to hire a wildfire mitigation person for 5 years, and that's through DNR. It's a long, drawn-out process. I think we filed that in October. Spokane Fire District 4, our neighbors to the east, did the same thing. It took a while to get the money released. They're advertising for a spot. I don't know if they've hired anybody yet or not, but that's one thing, and that person's going to be tasked with going out and doing home defensible space inspections and making sure that there's DNR money basically available to help that and point them in the right direction for crews and stuff like that. So we're hoping that helps. We've already started a little bit of collaboration right now with DNR, the Stevens County Conservancy District, and we've highlighted a spot, not Springdale proper, but around Springdale, and we've already done several home inspections already. The problem is, and it's fortunate because there's DNR money that can pay my guy overtime to go out and do it, so it's not on you guys. I mean, it's still your tax dollars, but it's not coming out of our budget and stressing that. The problem is he's doing that on his days off, so he has less days off. Overtime's not everything, you know, especially as the year progresses. So hopefully that mitigation grant pops in there. I know the DNR is really starting to stress this. That's why the Conservancy District got involved as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on. It's just trying to get the footing, and unfortunately, like almost anything else, like with WSRB, you're almost playing shell games sometimes, and we're a little bit behind the curve at this particular point. So we're trying as a fire district, but again, you know, when your call volume goes up 90% over the past decade, it's hard to get office stuff done. If you don't believe me, go look at my office when you leave through the window. It's a mess. But anyway, you know, in hosting meetings like this, while there's not a direct correlation to fixing the problem, at least it gets it out there on the right information, which is important, because I've noticed a lot online, there's a lot of misconceptions about, you know, and we're invested in you guys, you know, and I'm speaking for any fire district in any of the counties that are affected by this. We're all invested. You know, I've estimated we've got about $2.5 million in vehicles, equipment, training, and we send people out on MOBs, which gains experience, so we come back, and we're not getting any credit for that. That's your tax dollars at work, and I think we're pretty darn good at what we do, regionally especially, but we're not getting any, no one's acknowledging that, and it's unfortunate, and it could have an effect on property taxes down the road. You know, we're always, you know, I hate to say it, but, you know, our EMS levy's coming up, well, a fire levy in 3 years. Well, at some point, you guys are gonna get tired and go, I'm paying this much more in insurance, I don't have it to pay the fire district. And then it starts to have a reverse domino effect. So we're trying to avoid that whole situation. But I can guarantee that almost every fire district, especially in the Northeast here, is trying their hardest. I even had Seattle Fire Department on my side talking about a wildland credit with WSRB, and it kind of goes unanswered, so.
Right on. Well, I'll set up, maybe we can figure out a time. I mean, we have a lot, we have a big neighborhood. I mean, it's a rural big neighborhood.
Absolutely,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely.
I spoke with Jared at District 4 today.
Yep.
And they do have a gentleman named Eric that is supposed to be able to come out and start doing that in District 4, looking at your
Perfect.
house.
Spokane Fire District 4, so they did hire somebody
District
good.
4, I believe, has got somebody hired. We have a spot there and in District 1. And so we're hoping that if he comes out and looks at our stuff, that it'll help, but we're having problems that the insurance company will not talk to us. This is the reason you're done. Well, miscellaneous debris, we have a firewood stack on the far end of the field. Is that, if that's what you're considering miscellaneous debris, I can make it go away. But they will not respond to us, to tell us what the reason they're canceling us.
Just so you know, DNR does have a program for wildfire mitigation. We took part in it last year. The gentleman from DNR, his name is Steve DeCook for this area. And they'll come out to your property, they'll assess everything. And if you've got brush that needs to be removed, or trees that are closer than 14 feet apart, 14 feet up, and I mean, you hire a crew, they pay half of it. It's a grant program through DNR. It was a great program, we took advantage of it, and they came out and just wiped out a whole lot of our brush and trees and stuff that needed to go.
Yeah, DNR's got a couple grant programs. They have the Community Resilience Program that I think you're talking about, and then they have a forest homeowner program too, if you meet certain timber sizes and acreage. I think, Ellen, that's who you'd want to talk. They do community, they'll bring out a big dumpster and then big volunteer day. And we're kind of coming up to, this is kind of the time to start thinking about this. And they will fund the dumpster and then the cost of the dumpster, and everybody just spends a day cleaning up the community, and then they do that a lot. So it is a really great program.
So do they work with the wildfire score company to reduce that risk?
Nope.
The score?
And that's the concern from us. How do we get these wildfire scores to be accurate and updated?
So can we get that report and maybe present it to our underwriting from DNR?
I'm sure you could. I mean,
Who do
you
I
could
contact?
provide like an update, like the community did something on this date and cleared out fuel load. I don't know if they generate a report, but there'll be a lot of people there, and you can take pictures and,
So there would be no report, okay.
I don't know. I don't think there would be a report.
Well, with the DNR, they do, when you set up a plan too, it's in your plan
Yeah.
for taking understory out. Of course, noxious weeds, whatever else they have.
So who would we contact again at the DNR?
If you go to DNR's website and look up their Community Resilience Program, there's a list of local contact people. The head guy's in Spokane, his name's Guy Gifford.
Steve DeCook is our guy here.
Yep. And they've got regional people.
They want me to come up front if I'm gonna talk, so, instead of behind the camera, that's all right. So and Steve's a great guy, and here's a really cool thing.
Steve just retired.
Okay, so here's the other cool thing that, Steve's still a great guy even though he's retired, right? So the other cool thing, to a degree, we lost a lot of good help on DNR on the wildfire side of things. A lot of those experienced people moved to the forestry side, and those are who we're getting to work with. They're also putting a lot of money into this Firewise type program. You won't even see the red Chevy pickups running around anymore. They're going to be white Chevy Colorados that are doing a lot of this work. They're that committed to the program. The problem DNR was having is they cover such a huge area, obviously the state, but even if you go regionally, that's why they're trying to get fire districts involved, because they want us to work with you guys more. We know the layouts of the areas a little bit more, so that's why they're helping us to hire people, because sometimes we're a little bit quicker as well, depending upon the situation. So a lot of that stuff that Steve was working with in the past, we're going to have access to eventually. And I think sometimes, you know, you'll go out and you'll get an assessment of your property, and then what happens is they give you a list of things. Well, sometimes it's a little daunting, and they don't have a lot of time to follow up and circle back around. I don't know what your experience was with that.
They come back out after it was all done.
Okay, yeah.
They signed up.
So they give you the list, you guys do your work, and then they come back out. So what this program that we're trying to get our foot in the door with is we would be able to keep up a little bit more, because we only have 375 square miles to cover. They have, you know, the state basically in the regions. So we're going to hopefully have access to that. We have access to it now. We just don't have a lot of people to follow up, just like they don't. So
is this Wildfire Ready Neighbors?
yes,
The program?
yes.
Jason wanted you to mention it by name.
Yeah,
so
wildfire ready programs. There's pamphlets out here.
and
out
it's
front.
also on their website.
And it is on their website, absolutely. So thank you for that as well. So there's a lot. We're almost there. There's a lot going on, not only with this fire district. Spokane 4 is obviously ahead of us, but that grant, we mimicked theirs. And Jared Harms that you worked with, started, with us and went over there and is doing good things. So we talk back and forth all the time. So
And it sounds like this Eric guy, he's just now getting on board with this, so.
and that's good.
And I don't know, I'm hoping that if he comes out and he looks at your place and says, this is this and this is this, it sounds to me after talking to Jared today that he will actually give you a written report and say, your risk level is here, 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 and I'm hoping that the insurance company will actually speak to you and say, hey, look, I've done my due diligence, I'm trying to make this right so I can have insurance.
And I think that's a great point. I think an idea is, right now, the insurance companies are not doing one-on-one, they're blanketing an area.
That's what's happening to us.
And so that if you do get a notice that, hey, you're going into a higher risk, you can have this done or present them with a letter and say, we need you to come out because you need to look at what you're talking about, instead of just closing your eyes and throwing the dart and saying, up it goes. And I think that's going to be vitally important. And I know that's a task that we want to take on as well. We get it all the time. I get insurance agents calling all the time, just on basic homeowners insurance, nothing to do with the wildland, just trying to get an understanding of, hey, can you send me a letter of what you're sending if the house catches fire? And when we do that, that helps the process of streamlining them getting underwritten for their insurance.
I got a question for you,
Sure.
Chief. So, small little community teams like CERT, for instance, could that help kind of the buy-in for risk management to kind of?
CERT teams are set up to do they fall under emergency management.
Yeah.
And they're scattered more at the moment.
Yeah.
They're going to try to get more of them. I don't know, to answer your question. It's something I can talk to our emergency manager about. I'm sure she's open to listening, but again, those are going to be a whole group of volunteers, and we need them for when fires do break out or storms break out, closing down roads, helping with evacuations, setting up, domestic animal sites and Red Cross sites. So it's going to depend on how much activity we get out of the CERT group, and if they're willing to take that on, because there's specialized training that you have to send people to as well. So that complicates matters a little bit as well. Yep.
We have a couple of questions in the chat now. First one is, who determines the wildfire zone?
For insurance companies, each insurance company makes their own individual risk assessment to that. They do not use any state mapping. They often they'll use these data analytic companies, and they'll produce catastrophe modeling, which are forward projections of risk, or they'll use the wildfire risk scores, and that's how they do it. Each company does it themselves.
And second question, why isn't there assigned risk like in vehicle insurance?
So we, if I'm understanding assigned risk, there is, just like in auto, there's an insurer of last resort. So, so I don't know. I guess I can't answer that.
Anything else online? Anybody else in here?
Was in a different venue a week ago Thursday, and I was told that State Farm Insurance is no longer writing new policies in the state of Washington.
Never heard that.
Apparently there's a TIF that has to do with the, they're wanting a rate increase, and
So this is in California, not in Washington State. So that is accurate for California. They have pulled back in California due to a whole host of reasons. There's some regulatory issues in California where they were not allowed to use catastrophe modeling in their rates. That's the forward projection. California was slow to approve rates. And if you remember how I said insurance companies project a pool of money that they need in the future. And so if you don't update the rates, they're going to be less the pool in that time period. So there's another condition in California that, remember the slide I showed that had 350,000 people in their FAIR plan? So how California assesses that is if, and these are the highest risks in California. So if there was a claim, it gets assessed amongst all of the insurance companies that operate in California. And it's based on market share. State Farm has a 22% market share in California. So they would get assessed this massive amount of the highest risk. And they decided to slow down in California. They lost 20 years of underwriting profit over the last couple of years. So it's a good lesson for anyone that insurance companies, no state is that important to them. They will walk away from any state if they're losing money. And they're losing money in California.
it's my understanding that this just came out for Washington.
No.
Thank you.
Unless it happened today while I'm over here. And I haven't heard it from my office
This was a week
yet.
ago Thursday, so.
Nope.
I'll do some more research and get with
Sure.
the fire chief.
Now, could there be that State Farm is non-renewing or they are being selective? Yeah, sure. But they're not doing a blanket, we're not doing business in Washington State.
Okay.
Yeah. We talk to State Farm regularly. They are our highest market share too in Washington State. So, and across the country. But they're still writing here.
There is some insurance companies though that are doing the blanket, no more in this zip code. We're not
Yes.
doing that.
Yes,
So
you are right.
we've run into that trying to find insurance. It's
Yep.
like, where do you
And that's-
live? No, we're not doing it there.
Yep, and it could be for two reasons. One, as we talked about, they're only going to keep the people that they have, or they want less people there. Yep. Some of our smaller regional companies, this is definitely happening, where they are moving away from certain areas that they think is too high risk.
Anybody
I
else?
believe-
Oh, go
I
ahead.
believe California Casualty is withdrawn from Washington.
I don't know, but they're not You know, they're not in our top 40 or 50 market share companies. You know, some companies change their book of business. We have a company that's focusing on commercial, and they're moving away from residential. But companies do that. It's not relating to wildfire risk. They're just changing what their company is focusing on. We have a company that's getting out of the high net worth policies. There's like 4,000 of them, so they're getting out of that. But I'm not saying we're not in a crisis yet, but we're not California, we're not Oregon, we're not Colorado or New Mexico, Texas, Florida, Louisiana. Those states are under real serious pressure. But I will say your community is the tip of the spear here of what the state is going to experience.
Anybody else? Okay. I'm going to put David's stuff back up online. For those online, I'll start this back up for you guys so you can, his card's up front as well. I want to thank David for coming. Like I said, he's really busy over here. He's even coming back and doing fire district talk tomorrow, so we can talk a little bit more technical and kind of what we can do. I appreciate you guys for being here. I think we had 30-some folks online and 7 or 8 people down at Station 8, so that's a pretty good deal for us. I know there's a high interest. I'm going to keep in touch with my new friend here. For whatever reason, it seemed like we've always been trying to get to talk to the office of the insurance commissioner, and I had some friends over at Lake Wenatchee Fire, and I saw his presentation online. I'm like, I need him, especially with all the stuff going on. So again, thank David. Stick around, chit chat. Make sure you grab some of Ellen's cookies back there. For those online, sorry about the cookie thing. But stick around if you want. We can answer questions. My 2 commissioners are here. 2 insurance agents are here. We've got some other fire district folks over here from Fire 12, right? Yeah, Fire District 12. Dave and Bert. So thank you again, and have a great night.